live. Make it live. Okay, you're live, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'd like to call this Parks and Rec Board January 12, 2026, 4 p.m. It is now 4:07. We'll call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you for that. Do we have any public comments on any items not included on this agenda? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and welcome our guests tonight. We'll have presentations and discussions on possible grant options, and we've brought some talking points and questions for our guests. So we'll start with Gallatin Valley Land Trust. If you could please introduce yourself.
Sure.
And we'll go from there.
You don't want me to sit here and talk into the mic?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Matt Parsons. I'm the Trails Director at the Gallatin Valley Land Trust in Bozeman and Gallatin County. And yeah, I'm here to, I guess, talk about whatever you would like. Wendy, who is right there. Hi, Wendy. Thank you for the invitation tonight. You sent some talking points and questions. I'd be happy to go through those point by point, or how would you like me to
Let's go ahead and do that.
Okay,
if we
sure. Yeah. So, and I don't know if, did you get the same ones?
Yeah.
I do. You
okay.
guys have the same talking points.
Yeah, would it make
Great.
sense to go through them kind of all at the same time?
Yeah, I was going to say, do we want to tackle
So how about if
each
we
one
could have
and
our Prickly Pear Land Trust folks introduce themselves too, and then we'll go into
Sure.
a discussion
That's great.
of
Yeah.
the points.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Nate Kopp. I'm the Program and Trails Director for Prickly Pear Land Trust, and also a board member of the Montana Trails Coalition, and that's why I chatted with Wendy and invited Tom Lang along from the Montana Trails Coalition. And yeah, happy to kind of share our knowledge with you as much as we can, hopefully be helpful. Yeah.
Nate, could you spell your last name, please?
Kopp, K-O-P-P.
K-O-P-P. Okay, thank you.
My name is Tom Lang. I'm with the Montana Trails Coalition. We're based out of Helena, and we're a statewide organization.
Okay, welcome very much. Thank you, Tom. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the first one then. Does your organization have trails or projects that, as an organization, you formally maintain and operate as the official stewards, i.e. the Prickly Pear Creek or the Burke Traverse Trail? And if you could please just kind of maybe talk about that a little bit, Matt.
Sure. Yeah, so so I kind of broke this out into 4 categories. Our organization has easements that we work alongside of Gallatin County on. So we have a separate maintenance agreement to care for trail easements that are held by Gallatin County. The idea being that the county is great at holding legal agreements, but does not have a formal parks department or trails department, so we kind of serve in that role. We also have private landowner agreements, so these could be easements or also land use licenses. The example there is we partner with our local hospital to build and maintain trails on property that they own adjacent to the hospital. We have what I call handshake agreements. We have a partnership with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on Drinking Horse Mountain, which has about 2 miles of trail on it. And we have just kind of informally agreed for as long as it works for both of our organizations to continue to care for those trails. So that's kind of the handshake style. And then we have what we call fee property agreements, where we've actually purchased that property. We may have a partnership with the neighboring landowner, which is usually public land. In this case, it would be DNRC, the Montana DNRC, and and we care for those because we own the land. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Can you say one more time, you said you did not have, there was no Parks and Rec department? Sorry. And either,
Correct.
I'm sorry, were you talking about the county or for the city?
Yeah, so Gallatin County does not have a formal Parks and Recreation Department. They manage one park, and the fairgrounds staff actually manages that park for the county. Yeah.
Okay, so could I just ask then, Matt, volunteers, paid staff, contractors, et cetera, what is your labor pool?
Yeah, I would call it a hybrid
Okay.
model. We have, I have three staff essentially, one of which is a seasonal staff. Two of those, the seasonal and a full-time year-round staff, is dedicated to kind of our upkeep, maintenance, and management of those trail easements, any of the trails trail easements that we own, the handshake agreements, those types of things. So, but of course, we then rely heavily on our city of Bozeman, those fairground folks, and our volunteers to really round out caring for the trails.
Okay.
And I know Nate has a probably similar list here, but yeah, do you want to?
Yeah, similarly, Prickly Pear Land Trust, what we've spent a lot of our history doing is a lot of trail work that's kind of coupled with the acquisitions that we accomplished in the South Hills of Helena. A lot of that land was land that PPLT purchased and then subsequently donated to the city of Helena, and then entered into kind of a maintenance partnership with the city of Helena, and that has since grown, and now the city actually has some trail crews of their own that they're doing a lot of their internal maintenance. But there's about a 75-mile trail system that we consider the South Hills of Helena. About 40 or so of those miles are City of Helena lands, and then another 30 or so that we help maintain in partnership with the Forest Service. Yeah, similar to what Matt said, it kind of runs the gamut of kind of partnerships and relationships. We hold about 10 private trail easements, and that's easements that we hold with private landowners. Those are typically, in our case anyways, that's you have a strip of private land next to a highway, and you've got Forest Service land or public land beyond that. And we've worked with those landowners to create those access points to get you from the public land at the highway to the public land beyond the private land. And we hold 10 formal trail easements in that regard. And then we also operate 3 parks that total about 500 acres of land in Helena and East Helena. We just opened earlier this year in May the Prickly Pear Park, which, if you're familiar with the slag pile in East Helena, that's the land south of that, about 230 acres or so. And we've got kind of a crushed gravel trail system that we manage out there, as well as the parks at the Grove, which is off of Wiley Drive in East Helena, and then on the west side of town across from Fort Harrison is our 10 Mile Creek Park that we operate. And similar to what Matt said, it's certainly a hybrid model. We have some paid staff that helps maintain some of the trails in the parks, but we also average about 1,200 hours of volunteer work every year, and we're the primary ones responsible for overseeing some of those volunteer efforts to maintain, whether it's the trails, the parks, you name it. We're doing a lot of that with our volunteers. Another contractors, certainly on occasion, and I'd like to highlight the Montana Conservation Corps as a group that we've contracted with and work. They kind of bridge the gap between contractors and volunteer. We pay for their services often, but they just kind of fill a different kind of role relative to a true contractor.
Okay, thank you. Any questions go ahead.
You mentioned you operate 3 parks.
Mm-hmm.
Are those parks on property you own, or are they city property or county property?
In this case, it's land that PPLT owns. Yeah, so all kind of unique situations that we were the ones to come into ownership of it. In the case of the two East Helena parks, we have a termed agreement to transfer those to, at this point, the East Helena School District, but could very well be East Helena itself. We're in the best position to kind of do the trail construction, park construction, and maintenance now, but at the point when they're kind of grown and have the capability, PPLT is willing to transfer that over, and that's the intent at this point. If they're not ready in 15 years or so, we'll probably just enter into another agreement to continue that ownership, but at some point the plan is to transfer it to East Helena.
Any other questions for Nate? How about you, Tom?
The Trails Coalition really doesn't do on-the-ground projects. Traditionally, we've been legislative advocates that create grant programs. So the Trails Coalition has kind of been in a grant-making position through volunteers. It's detailed out in that State of the Trails report, but we're moving more into kind of this technical assistance area, and we're kind of exploring it as a potential growth, particularly with communities that don't have a Parks and Rec municipal department or county Parks and Rec, because there are a lot around the state that just don't have those positions built in, and we want to try and figure out a solution to kind of bridge the gap between the desire to build trails and fill that gap of know-how, so that then communities can go out and get that grant money and bring it back in and be able to implement and maintain those trails.
Okay. That's nice to see the balance of the three for us. Okay, how about we work down on a few of the more questions here. Challenges, benefits of those relationships that you have in the stewardship, both Matt and Nate.
I think in terms of challenges, I mean, I think we all are aware maintenance is a challenge. You have to keep up with anything that you construct and you build, and there's an expense to that. And in recent years, those expenses have certainly gotten more than they used to be. We're finding ourselves, even though we have a traditional volunteer-based model, that we are using a little bit more contract work and paid services for certain items that we can't kind of manage in our traditional capacities. And that's where the kind of the grant funding comes in to help fill some of those gaps, get us access to a little bit more funding. I think it's a lot of partner management. You know, we've got, counties, cities. In our case, we've got multiple, user groups, the Montana Bicycle Guild, the Helena Hikes, a hiking group in town. We've got the Forest Service, a number of partnerships that we're kind of working with and managing. I think that's that's a challenge, but also a benefit. We have a lot of people who are willing to pull on the rope kind of with us, and that provide us support when we need it. But it is, you're maintaining a level of relationship in order. You don't want anything to fall through the cracks. If we want to get this done, I've got to work with the Forest Service or whoever owns the land, in addition to the user groups that might be most interested in that property or that project. And I think across Montana right now, we're dealing with some growth and different expectations of types of use that people want to see on the ground. And I think being able to adapt and kind of meet those needs is certainly a challenge, but also kind of an opportunity baked in.
Yeah, we're one of the challenges that we've run into is the perpetual nature of these obligations that we've put ourselves into. Looking out, 10, 15, 20 years from now, as a nonprofit-based organization, we rely heavily on donor funds, right? And what happens if those donor funds should dry up? So I did want to communicate this to you guys as kind of a FYI, and that's, once you put the dog station up, the trash can out, the signage up, there's this perpetual maintenance that comes along with it, and an expectation from the public, the general public, that you're going to, do whatever is promised there. So we've been very, very shy about taking on anything that has that word perpetual in it. Even our obligation to the county, we just renegotiated and signed our contract with them to care for those easements that they hold. It has a 10-year term, so we're saying in 10 years we're going to take another look at this, and maybe they will have a parks department by then. We can kind of offload that obligation. Our deal with the hospital is only 5 years. So we've been very careful about what we get into, and I would just caution that to you guys with anything, and I'm sure you have parks that you care for, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, but yeah, there's a lot of expectations, and the flood of phone calls, emails, things like that is just ongoing. And I see Nate shaking his head. Yes, you know, and we've tried various ways to try to manage that. But you know, if someone comes up to the trailhead and there's trash on it, doesn't matter who manages it, owns it, whatever, they call us, and so. Whether or not it's our responsibility, it is our responsibility to find out whose responsibility it is. So it does cost you, you know, time, money, and resources, no matter what. So yeah, that's really kind of our biggest challenge. I would say the other thing that we're kind of dealing with these days is the resource damage that comes along with, you know, public anything, but public trails in particular out in kind of natural areas and things like that. The increase in volume of people, you know, trampling native vegetation, dog poop, all those things that come with the public. So, and you know, fires are becoming a bigger topic. At least in Bozeman, the Bozeman area, people are concerned about the threat of wildfires, and so it's actually affected our ability to go out and get new trail easements. So we always say that we need to do a good job of caring for and stewarding the trails that we already have, because if we don't, no one will give us a new easement. So so we take our, you know, our management responsibility very seriously, and we see that as being one of the things that people are pushing back on these days as well. What if someone goes up and camps and starts a campfire, and the campfire gets out of control, and you know, take it from there. So.
Wow, understandable. Any other conversation on those topics, on the challenges and benefits of the stewardship?
Well, I think one huge benefit, at least certainly for PPLT, is being tied to the trails as the entity that has provided a lot of these opportunities to the public has been hugely beneficial for PPLT, our reputation, our ability to do a lot of the work. I think in some ways, to Matt's point, we get the calls oftentimes for situations that are happening on, whether it's Forest Service or city lands. That's because people are associating us with the trails. And it's pretty easy for us to either call that person or connect them to it. And it's a good problem to have. That means they're thinking of us as the ones who are, responsible for this really awesome system that we have. But it comes with some of those emails and phone calls, making sure we're not the land manager in those cases. We'll transfer you to them. But in the case of our parks, obviously, it's us as well.
That's a really good point, Nate. Thanks for staying positive. Our organization as a land trust, we do private land conservation. That is probably our number one priority. But what we do, we call community conservation, right? It's the work that is relevant in our community and makes some of that, those conservation easements and that kind of work more visible in the community. It makes our organization more visible. And without a doubt, when we're out on the trails, everyone who walks by is like, thank you for what you do. It is so important to our communities, I think, that we have these robust trails programs, and people rely on them for so much of their, identity and community and mental and physical health benefits and all those things. So they're wildly popular. and yes, worth the phone calls.
Yep. So then, Tom, I think the next one kind of maybe falls in your arena is, do you have a fundraising plan? How's it managed? What kind of fundraising does your organization do, or does your organization help with the fundraising?
So we're in kind of an interesting situation. We were volunteer run for a long time and didn't need funds, and then now we are in a position where I need to get paid as a contractor, and I want to grow our program, and I would eventually like to create some new positions. But really, our fundraising plan, I think, kind of deviates from this trail work. But really, I think where we're going is this idea that if communities need to go out for grants primarily for this work, the fundraising plan is, let's put together a sound grant application so that we can get this money and then turn this area with a trail and a trailhead and some signage and connectivity. What I think we're doing, our fundraising plan at this point is to start providing communities or counties like Broadwater County funding or planning services and planning assistance, so that a large community-wide trails plan could get put together, and we can be, so one of the questions is, do you go through your grant prep through an engineering firm? Do you contract out a grant writer? And I think where Montana Trails Coalition, our new fundraising approach, in addition to some other things we do, is we kind of want to be that engineering firm that's doing the trail planning for a quarter of the price. Because we do have partners like PPLT and GVLT and the City of Billings and the City of Great Falls that really have a lot of these planning resources in place, and we want to synthesize them and then be able to provide these planning approaches and put together a 10-year plan that has a grant schedule, that has cost estimates and qualified contractors, so that this can be built by a community with the help of MTC as a convener. It can then bring in grant funds that can help pay for some of Trails Coalition's contracted service, but it can pay for all the materials and labor for on-the-ground work. And then can leave the community with a 10-year plan. That's just great. You got this initial grant award for $15,000. You built some new infrastructure, and now it's time to grow because we built that ladder together so that 5 years from now you're going for a grant for $100,000 to replace a bridge across the Missouri or something like that. But it's scaling the approach and then planning it and engaging the community too to understand, what do you want? What's your vision for trails for the future of Broadwater County? And part of that's short term, very practical and realistic, and then the other part is, what's your vision for the future in 10 years, aspirationally, and where do you want to see the trails in the community? So that's kind of where our new fundraising approach is going, so that we can fill that technical assistance arm. And we've actually been in touch with MSU Extension and their Community Vitality program, because extension agents are oftentimes coming to us with the question of, we really want trails in Broadus, but we don't have a volunteer group, we don't have public works, so what we're trying to do is build a toolkit and then a planning approach that brings that capacity on the ground and then trains community members to then take that over and maintain it. And coordinates with 4-H so that we can have them doing some long-term maintenance work, and it can build into existing civic programs that are there that have backs and hands to do some of the labor and just coordinates it. So that's kind of where we're at in a long-winded answer.
No, that's very informative on that, because I know many of the communities, especially ours, are somewhat struggling with that. We've got a wonderful trails plan that's been developed by Al and his group, and John and the Broadwater Community Development folks. But where we were talking about, where do we as a Parks and Rec board support that plan plus the plans that we've built and or contracted out to have built, and where do we go with those? And what resources and what grant writing and some of that we're looking at doing. Mm-hmm. So, okay, so let's tackle. Anybody have any questions on that, on the fundraising part?
Yes.
Yes.
Not so much on fundraising, but what are you finding like for community involvement? Are people getting involved in communities like Broadus? Because I feel like that's one of our biggest challenges here is really engaging the community and working with Great West, who's been our on-call engineer for the county.
Right.
Working on these master plans, getting people involved, it's really difficult. We ended up doing design workshops online, like surveying people, putting out plans online, people to come in, because no one's showing up to meetings.
Right.
So I was curious what you're seeing as you're engaging communities. Are you seeing a good response?
So it's hit or miss, and we don't have like a huge case study record. But I think what we do see is the most effective meeting, and I've run one of these in Miles City and Glendive, is getting a map just like that, just the county-wide map, and bringing the community in and having some structure to the meeting, but saying we're going to look at all existing trails and trailheads right now, and we can let folks say, I think those are in great shape, and these ones need some help. So like understanding existing assets and then moving it into kind of what are other areas where potential development could happen. But the other thing that I've seen is really complicated very fine-tuned civic engineering plans from Great West that are quite frankly overcomplicated for the purposes of trail development and outdoor recreation connectivity. So we try and use more plain language that allows the communities and like just stakeholders that are either just enjoy hiking or that are very invested in a volunteer capacity to provide meaningful input that's then built into kind of these project ideas. And the other thing that Nate and I were talking about on the ride over is the other thing is we focus on this idea of universal accessibility. So it's building in kind of all the specs of ADA, but not having to meet those engineering requirements that are 5 to 7 times more expensive. And it's kind of using practical solutions and kind of watering down some of the engineering because it really doesn't need to be, it's not roads and bridges and interstates. It's dirt trails and shared use paths and trying to figure out what's already out there to then just connect. But communities want to talk about it, and I think having one big map and some food to bring people in works the best.
Well, and I would say from what I know of the process that Broadwater County's embarked on, kind of started off with the community piece has already started with the Al's group and all the effort that's put on that map. I know it is a map very similar to that. And so I think that's a big part of it. The community's already identifying kind of these are some of our opportunities. And I think the next step is really the transition piece from like, well, which one, Broadwater County is huge. We're not going to do all the trails at the same time. So what's the smaller project that's going to be a win for the local community to start to getting more people excited? And I think, Lindsay, I can't remember if it was you that I spoke to on the phone.
Probably.
We
were talking about the trails out here.
Well, so Tom and I, before we got here, we just drove down Mill Road over here and checked out that little county piece that's over
10-acre
there.
piece at Mill in Centerville.
Yeah. And so we just drove over there, and while we were over there, Tom pointed out that there was a couple walking with a stroller on the road with their dog. And you look at that opportunity, there's already public use happening in an area and you've got the Bureau of Rec group sites and access right off the Missouri down there, not too far as the county piece. And it's kind of a small project where you can start to generate like, hey, that couple now, let's get them off the road and they can spend 15 minutes walking on that county piece, looping around, and now all of a sudden you've created a new community. It's like, well, who's the group that did this? We can put the kiosk up, we've got some information, and we found that in Helena and East Helena. It's like, you build it, they will come. And to put in perspective, so the parks, they're larger than that piece, but we put trail counters up this year at our parks. From May on, we've had at every single one of our 3 parks, the 10 Mile, the Grove, and Prickly Pear Park, over 30,000 hits since May of this year at every single one of them. And obviously East Helena we're drawn from a bigger population center, but East Helena not so much. And each of those parks, 30,000 plus hits just in the last 6 months, which just underscores the impact that these spaces have and the pool of people that are willing to, of those people who can support this, who can help. And we've generated some of our volunteers from just building it and our supporters from having it out there. I mean, Matt and I are in unique positions. Our organization is fundraising for programs beyond just the trails piece. We have to play small roles in it, trying to get our grants for our key projects that we have. But we're also, to the point of, our donors, we rely on donors for a lot of it. And we try to build out some grants for some of the key projects that we have.
So, you guys, either one of you guys do specific fundraising, like events, or is it all just through like easement donation stuff for donors, sponsors? How do you come up with the funds that you have that you can use to do all these things before you apply for grants?
Yeah.
Well, I think
You want to start?
Yeah. In our case, we have some unique funding opportunities, but two of the things that we've done, PPLT is now in our, I'm going to screw this up, 25th year of our Don't Fence Me In Trail Run, which is now one of our two major fundraising events that we have. That'll be in May, the first or second Saturday in May this year. I think it's the 9th this year. And that's grown. You started with a couple dozen people running it, and now we've got 1,400 last year when we did it. And then we have a banquet that we do in the fall, our Harvest Moon banquet, which is a big fundraiser for us. And then it's organizational grants and our folks getting donations. But those are the two, and we've now, the cool thing is with some of the parks that we have, we've now been able to allow other groups to run 5Ks, and they can fundraise for their own efforts because they've got the space to operate the 5K, for example. And like 10 miles flat, it's attractive to a lot of groups versus the South Hills, which are pretty steep and it kind of limits who can come out there.
So quick follow-up on that then, Nate. Do you ask them for a donation when you rent that park, or do you rent that park? You just have them do volunteer maintenance? How do they compensate you for the use of that park for an organization?
We have kind of, I can't remember the specifics, and we're not a parks department, but we try to fill the gap. We have a small fee expectation for the use of it, which we waive for certain nonprofit or school groups. But we do ask for basically to cover our costs, and if there's an impact for maintenance after a race, we have to come out and clean something up. So we do have some small fee that we charge, but to cover the maintenance costs basically.
Okay, thank you.
So I just wanted to build on that a little bit, and so we have a pretty diversified, as PPLT probably does as well, but a pretty diversified fundraising machine at GBLT. We've got 3 full-time staff who raise funds. We're very lucky to have that. So we go after private donors. We try to connect them with, we build these long-term relationships with them. Some of them are only interested in conservation easements. Some of them are only interested in trails. But we try to connect them with projects that they, would like to use themselves, like to take their grandkids to, or just believe in. So we do have that kind of private fundraising angle. We'll sometimes loop events into those kinds of strategies as well. But oftentimes, and most of our funding now comes from those private donors. I would say 75% of our funding is from private donations. In the city of Bozeman, we have 2 kind of funding sources that we tap into. One is the cash in lieu of parkland fund. I don't know if you guys have one of these things going on in the county, but when a developer basically says, no, I don't want to give you any land for park, they can opt to donate cash instead. So those funds, we track. We know how much the city has, and we can tap into those by asking the city commission, to appropriate funds from those funds to, our trail project or our park project or whatever. And because of Bozeman's growth, that fund just keeps getting replenished again and again and again. So, in fact, they had a hard time getting rid of the money, if that tells you anything. The other city fund that the taxpayers, and this is kind of germane to the board here, I think. So the taxpayers voted to implement their own bond to create parks and trails, right? And so it was, I believe it was over 10 years, they appropriated $15 million and they set up a bond fund. And we created a ton of parks and trails and amazing projects with this. And we're continuing to pay for it, of course. But it was a way to kind of kickstart some of the gaps in the parks and trails system that we had. Likewise, on the county side, we have an open space bond. It's actually, excuse me, use the right terminology here. We have an open space levy. It was a bond. The commissioners, once the bond expired, actually decided to levy a tax from on people's property tax bills. And so I believe we sold it as for the cost of a pizza, which in Bozeman is like $30. But for the cost of a pizza, every year, you know, you're donating into this fund. We use that to pay for some of our conservation easement projects, first and foremost. But the commission carved out about 25% of that fund. And essentially, you apply every year for that funding. So GVLT applies for it. Trout Unlimited applies for it. The city of Bozeman has actually applied for it to use kind of as matching funds. And it's highly, highly leveraged money, right? You might ask for $50,000 for a $250,000 project. So the more leverage, the higher your project scores. But that's another way that we can tap into various funding sources, government funding sources. And then Tom actually worked for FWP and administered, you were the Trail Stewardship Grant Program, right? So TSP and the RTP, Recreational Trails Program, grants each have a $100,000 cap. So we annually ask for one or the other to support our projects, TSP or RTP, depending on what's the better fit. And so I know leverage matters there as well with the committee, but if what we like to do is kind of stack those, so we'll take a cash in lieu city pot of money and match it to get more county money, and then we'll tell the state, well, we have city and county money here, and maybe a little bit of private funding, so will you give us $100,000 more to round out this project? And it seems to work. So anyway, just to give you an idea of how we kind of build those budgets out, we often have city, county, state, sometimes federal money that can go into some of those projects.
That's great. Okay, we've already come about 40 minutes in. Do we want to continue down our list, or does somebody have a very specific one that they want to address before we run out of time?
Yeah, I would, if you don't mind.
Yes, please, go ahead.
In your professional expertise as the trails and easement gurus, what would you suggest for Broadwater? And this is kind of a loaded question for you guys, because I'm sure you have questions for us. I hear what you're saying about starting small, and that's kind of what you and I had talked about on the phone. This is several months ago now. In exactly the areas we discussed that you drove today, that connect that county park, and then how it would connect the town, right? Starting with something attainable, realistic. I think people here would use it. I mean, you see people everywhere. There's a need for it. We do have a little bit of mentality of like, well, what the heck do we need trails? Go use the public land that's in the mountains. Well, you know, a mom, you know, taking her kid for a walk isn't going to drive clear into the mountains to do that. What would be your suggestion on a starting point for our county and for our board? we have some different funding sources that are helpful. Probably not quite in the amounts that you can find in Bozeman, but again, what would be your suggestion?
Well, I mean, personally, I think it is that starting small piece is nice, something visual. I mean, I because we just drove by it, I'll use that as an example, but that little corner property over there, I remember coming from a background of building trails and expecting trails to look like the wilderness, Bob Marshall all the time, like, what am I going to summit, how am I going to climb?
Right.
When we built our 10 Mile Creek Park, which is wholly in flat, former ranch land that had been bought by developers, and then were unable to develop it, we purchased it. It's flat, wholly flat, and I was like, who's going to come out here when you could just summit Mount Helena, which is right there? And I was so wrong. The amount of people that use those flat trails and appreciate it is far more than used. To put it in perspective, in 2018 we had a trail study done that estimated about 65,000 users of the South Hills Trail System annually. And I've just told you at each of our 3 parks we had 30,000 in 3 months, or 6 months. Excuse me. So the amount of people using the parks is well in excess of our amazing South Hills trail system. And so I think a property like that, you build a little kiosk, choose to decide if you can support a trash can or a dog waste station. And if the answer is yes, put it up. And if the answer is no, don't put it up. And build a little path for folks to go down to it looks like a little wetland area on the south side there. And you might have enough inertia to then take on something else. You guys are all more familiar with the trails plan across Broadwater County. If there's other
Absolutely.
spots in the county that make sense, or that you can leverage connections to other public lands, a connection to the Bureau of Rec land from another piece, that might be a good starting point. Forest Service land, if you're connecting to Forest Service, there's also, I think here would qualify for the Missouri River RAC funding, which is funding that the Forest Service has on their lands, but I think they also fund the connective pieces. But I think small helps get momentum. So for what that's worth. And I think there's a question here about map. I did bring our trail map for folks if wanted to look at it. It's about 20 years old in the making. We've gone through a number of iterations. Certainly don't have to start at this level for like a trails map. Gallatin Valley has a great map too.
Brought one too. We did not coordinate that.
But that's also just a great way to get information out there. I will qualify this. We are looking at modifying it because it's gotten pretty expensive for us to print these. So we may be looking at other alternatives.
So it's funny you mentioned that too, because Nate, we have one of our questions is how did you get a map designed and printed?
Yeah, and I think I'm projecting here a little bit because the original maps predate my time with the Land Trust, but you might have GIS staff that work for the county or that operate locally, but we've had the benefit of having a wonderful volunteer help us with a lot of the trail routing that you can do in terms of the map creation, and then we do now pay a graphic design group to help us with some of the design elements of the map. We do all like the information, the writing of the information. We have some amateur skills at PPLT to do some of the GPS design, trail alignment work, but we are kind of outsourcing some of that. But we're also have a pretty tight focus on the South Hills with our map. If it's a county-wide map, you might look at something different. If it's a Townsend map, that might look a little different. Like your Main Street to the Mountains map is maybe a great urban example.
I just want to pile on to what Nate said to drive that message home. And the small wins thing is really huge. And I've always said that, the best trail is a trail that people are going to use. We have some pathways, for example, in and around Bozeman that don't get much use because they're not comfortable. They're along like major, I don't know if you've been down Jackrabbit Lane from Belgrade to Four Corners. I mean, that trail is a ghost town, and I don't know how many, millions of dollars have gone into that and will continue to go into that. Extremely important route, extremely important for people who do not have transportation and need to get from Belgrade to Four Corners, and we're trying desperately to get Bozeman to Four Corners and Bozeman to Belgrade all connected, but it's not a recreational trail, right? Yeah, if you can find a place where it's comfortable for people to walk, maybe there's a view, the trail doesn't have to be that long. And, you know, loops are great, but even an out and back that's maybe a mile long is a great walk, dog walk, stroller walk, baby jogger walk, whatever, for 80% of your trail users, I think. And as Tom said, leaning into that universal accessibility, that's, you know, you can build a gravel trail, which is one of the least expensive trails to build out there. You don't have to pave it necessarily. Depends on the funding source, I guess. I should qualify that and say some, you know, some restrictions are out there on whether it needs to be ADA accessible or not. But if you can get away with it, the gravel trail that's well maintained, well built and well maintained, can handle wheelchair traffic. It can handle walkers. It can handle, you know, the width requirements for having bicycle traffic, adaptive mountain bikes, all that fun stuff that's kind of coming out and flooding our trails these days. And it's, you know, it's something that is probably well within putting together a RTP grant or a TSP grant and having some county money chipped in there and have a bake sale or a barn dance or whatever, you know, to try to get some community buy-in. But yeah, and do that and put the signs out and say, if you like that, you know, donate more money to the next project and whatever that next project is. I think that's key to building a program. And I'll just say one other thing and then I'll shut up. But GVLT's first project was the Pete's Hill project. It's a mile of trail. It's gravel trail. I think back in the day it was just dirt. And that was what really got the program off the ground. And people loved it, and they loved the fact that we protected it. And I think the whole thing was like $100,000 to buy 40 acres back in the day. And volunteers built the trail, you know. So, but I feel like you guys are kind of like that. That was when we were smaller and scrappier, and handshakes were a good way to do things, and got things done. But we also put, you know, real estate transactions together and real money together to do these things, and that's what launched the whole idea of Main Street to the Mountains. So.
Yeah, and my recommendation actually comes with an offer. And it's this idea of, so the Trails Coalition is going to go out for a grant this cycle with the Trail Stewardship Program, because they now offer planning awards. And we're going to build a trail toolkit, a trail planning toolkit. And that'll talk about, you know, trail and trailhead design, you know, like what are common projects. And it'll create essentially a menu of options for that, for signage packages, and say, if you want this, it's going to cost this much. And if you want to create, you know, local history signage, here's the approach to do that. If you want to talk about native vegetation, here's how you do that. And then we'll talk about trash and installing vault toilets and trailside facilities like shade shelters, picnic areas, and even potentially as far as playgrounds. Because these are a lot of the projects that PPLT and GVLT and a lot of our member partners have already done. And so what we're going to do is compile that as a resource that says, like, here's essentially your menu, and then because the cost estimates are there, you can put this into a grant application and they're accurate. Then you just need to identify local contractors and those things. But it's also going to have a training element, because we don't want to just put together a document and then drop it on a community and say, go for it, start at page 1 and get to page 30, and because that's not really how those are effective. And so what we also want to apply for in this grant is demonstrating, you know, its use through a pilot project. And so, and based on Townsend's proximity to Helena, you know, what we would be able to offer is, coming in with this trail toolkit once it's built, probably in the middle of the summer. So starting a planning process in the middle of the summer, and then really waiting until the fall when folks have a little bit more free time to do stakeholder engagement, to talk about what's out there and what do you see, to do kind of this mapping, because one of my I have a coworker that does mapping and is really interested in kind of bringing these mapping technologies to small town projects that need them at a reasonable rate. And then the last is this project prioritization, where it's saying, let's rank these projects in one category on how badly we want them and just in terms of importance, and then also rank them in terms of practicality, so that even if this is a really important project, we know practically speaking it's going to take 3 to 5 years to get it done, so we put it in the 3 to 5 year category. And that's kind of when you realize your low-hanging fruit is everybody wants this and it's a relatively achievable
Quick
task. Let's put it right in priority one. And so I think the offer is, for the Parks Board and for the county to consider this. And I think the next step, if it was decided to be a good idea, would be, another conversation, but essentially a letter of support from the Parks Board saying, within the Trails Coalition's app, Broadwater County Parks Board has agreed to be the pilot community for this, so that we can understand these resources, test it, and the other thing is, it's synthesizing existing plans that are happening, and then really putting it into this kind of grant-ready schedule for 10 years. And then it's saying, an event is part of that. Well, here's kind of how you organize an event and can kick it off, and here are some other funding sources for that. Because there's these trails grants that are out there, but also if there are projects that are $10,000 or under, you don't need to go to the state. There are foundations. So the other thing is kind of combing through what kind of foundation, is there a Broadwater Community Foundation that awards $5,000 annually to projects, because then you could start piecemealing these together, and building those partners too. And that's part of that engagement. Is you have your federal land managers who manage a lot of land, then you have your municipal, but who else do you have? You have community volunteer groups, you have an equestrian group, do you have OHV riders and snowmobilers, bringing everybody together, and then that builds a really strong application for when you do go to FWP for $50,000. You have a document that said, this was vetted by the county board, this was vetted by volunteers, this was vetted by stakeholders, and this is our vision of Trails of the Future. So something to consider.
Yes.
So the letter of support would then come after you build your kit, and then we want to be the first pilot project, so to speak, under that kit, or request that.
Yeah, well, and I think the letter of support would come in the next 3 weeks, because the grant application is due in late January, early February. But the pilot, the actual planning and organizing wouldn't happen until the summer. But the toolkit would be made in that meantime. And so that's where, leaning on our partners and getting this information from Nate and Matt and other folks, and then being able to say, here's what we believe is going to work. Let's ground truth this in Broadwater County. And we know that we'll get to what we need to get to, but along the way we'll also say, this is a dead end road. We got to change how we're approaching this mapping component. We need to find a workaround here. And that would be kind of the learning curve within it.
I have a question for you. So BCDC is a community organization, obviously, and the Trails Group is part of BCDC. Then you have Parks and Rec in the county. We're overlapping on some goals right now, which is a good thing, because it's always nice to have more than one group working on something. Would you need support from both groups, from primarily his group? Would you be working more with BCDC, since they've really mapped out? I mean, they have done a ton of work on their trail mapping, research. They have a lot of it put together. So would it be working with them with the support of the county, and then we kind of figure out where Parks and Rec would fit in that process?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. And I think the only approach that the Trails Coalition has an interest in is this idea of county trail mapping. And so whether it's how, you know, and that would be housed in with different counties. But our goal is this idea of, well, if we can start figuring out how to do county mapping for trail assets and long-term planning, and then we start having neighboring counties all do a very similar planning approach, then we're starting to get regional planning for outdoor recreation across the state. And I think from each county that would be different. So, you know, in Marr County or Lincoln County or Jefferson County, it's where is it housed? And I think what's interesting and unique and seems like it's setting the stage for Broadwater counties, you already have a trails group with that trail planning and that early stage in it. And now it's about, linking what, like, just understanding the landscape of resources out there, and then being able to say, here are the actual project costs, and putting those schedules together and saying, and designating roles and responsibilities, which I think is, to Matt's point and Nate's point about long-term maintenance, that's a big part of this planning too, is saying, well, who's going to take care of this? And they say, well, we can 4-H, you know, this is perfect, or the county fairground staff, or just understanding what positions exist, and then saying, we have a huge gap here. We need to go from scratch, build a volunteer program for this.
Yeah, and I think just in terms of, just for context, the Trails Coalition's at a point where, I mean, this was a fortuitous meeting. The reason I thought of Tom is he had been talking about exactly what you all are talking about for the Trails Coalition. But the ask right now is basically, grants are more likely to get funded if we have diverse support. And so the letters of support, I think Tom would probably take them from anyone, you know. But if we have the County Parks Board, BCDC, you know, I think PPLT would be willing to sign on to this, because I was telling Tom on the way over, I got a call from Boulder the other day, and I'm sure Matt feels the same way. We want to help and provide our knowledge to as many groups as we can, but we have capacity challenges. We can't physically do that, and so PPLT would certainly be supportive of the Trails Coalition goal of bringing those resources to other communities, because we can't be everywhere. And just because we've cracked the code in one part of the state doesn't mean what we can do necessarily translates. So I think that's kind of the goal for the letters of support.
I was going to go, and Madam Chair, do you mind? I'm sorry, cutting in. I have one.
It's okay.
One more follow-up.
That's okay. I do too, but that's
So many follow-ups.
You go.
So many. We can stay here for hours. Oh my goodness. Okay. In that capacity of figuring out, do we need an easement through that private property? Do you start really small on just the county property, but we know that needs connected? It's going to go through that private land that you drove by. There's, you know, some wetland stuff there. There's different things. Is that something? Obviously, we're not experienced in handling easements and doing that. Would that be something we would bring? And I say we, meaning the county, BCDC, whomever, bring in Prickly Pear, or are you guys like, oh, hold the phone, we can give you some guidance, but we can't really be involved in that?
I can speak for PPLT. I mean, one of the unique things with PPLT is we've been doing a lot of work in the Townsend area and Broadwater County through our private lands program. We have an agreement with the National Guard to protect land outside of Fort Harrison and the Limestone Hills training area. And so we actually have unique funding opportunities that other land trusts don't have in this area, or other groups. So I think in our case, I've already talked to Travis, our lands director, about, hey, keep an eye out for certain projects that might serve a park or public benefit in Townsend, and maybe they wouldn't be the highest conservation priority in terms of wildlife protection, but they'd serve a purpose. So I think PPLT would certainly be willing to have those conversations, or at least maybe give whoever a couple talking points of, like, you know, at the end of the day, private landowners, they're in charge of their land, and if they say no, well, that's it. They've said no. We're certainly not going to try to coerce anyone to work with us, but we have the skills and the knowledge to be, might be how you ask or how you present something, and if it's not appropriate for us to do the ask, it's probably sometimes locals are usually better. You know your neighbors better than we know your neighbors, but we'd certainly be willing to help out if we can. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
I brought things for you guys, one of which is our maintenance agreement with the county, just so you can see what that might look like.
Great.
We also have copies of, easements with DNRC, with our county, with our city, with GBLT. that we could share. I'm sure Nate would be willing to share that as well as kind of templates,
Thank
you know.
Yeah, that'd be handsome.
But in particular, the county maintenance agreement was just signed on December 9th, so it's barely a month old. And we had an attorney go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and the county's attorney went through it with a fine-tooth comb. So it's pretty, like, you know, they reviewed all the Montana laws and blah, 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 blah. So it's really well done, I guess is the point.
That would be very helpful.
Drop that with you. In fact, here you go.
Say we leave it with our resource office. So my follow-up question to Tom was, are you strictly non-motorized? Or does your Montana Trails Coalition do horse, equestrian, or all categories?
Yeah, all categories. So we're motorized and non-motorized group. And so in that, if you get a chance after this to look through the State of the Trails report, it shows the diversity of user groups we have. And to Matt and Nate's point, so part of this toolkit is the idea that, you know, being able to turn this county agreement into a template, you know, it's not plagiarism. Like, this is all public information. So what we're trying to do is prevent communities from having to reinvent the wheel and to learn the hard way, and to compile all these resources that say, here's how you talk to private landowners, here's how you work with Burlington, Northern Santa Fe, at least to help folks initiate the process. They say, make these phone calls, here's the number to the regional office. And then the idea too is that MTC's there as a point of contact to say, we've made it through the first 8 boxes, and now we've got a huge roadblock here. And so that's part of what I saw when I was working for FWP, and really just a little background about the Trail Stewardship Program is that when it was made a state program in 2019, it was made to fund small community projects, really looking at communities that don't have the Parks and Rec capacity of a Helena or a Bozeman. But what I realized running the program, and what we all talk about on a regular basis in our board meetings, is you could build a grant program for small community projects, but if you don't build an on-ramp, not all small communities are going to be able to get into that funding source. And so this toolkit, in essence, is that kind of on-ramp. And this idea of piloting it is saying, let's build this, let's go through this toolkit, and let's put a project schedule together, and then get you ready for a grant application or a number of grant applications going forward, and a plan to maintain those and manage those going forward. So it's really trying to unlock resources to these like contracts, and resources to these cost estimates and project plans that can be kind of plug and play. And then eventually unlocking funding and bringing that state money into the small community projects that it was intended for, but has sometimes struggled to reach.
That's exactly what we need. This is fortuitous. Good job.
All right, I see we have one question from Mr. Hahn in the back.
Comment and a couple of questions. So if we provide you with a letter of support, would you give us a letter of support? Because we're applying for that same grant.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then digitizing, you mentioned GIS and stuff. Are you on Google Maps at all? I would hope that we could put some of our routes and stuff on Google Maps.
Yeah, I think, yes. I think the nice thing is, for better or worse, sometimes they're wrong, but the amount of crowdsourced stuff that people are putting up usually means that if you build it, it'll show up digitally, whether you want it to or not. And we've rarely had to actually formally tell Google or like OnX, and I know a lot of folks are using OnX these days. Their Trails Layer, I don't know where they're populating it from, but we are not telling them, and it shows up. So certainly there's resources out there to make that transition to like the digital world.
Okay. One other question too. You mentioned that the first trail you put in was a gravel trail, and he says, "What long as it's well maintained?" Do you see a lot of difference between a gravel trail and an asphalt trail for maintenance?
Oh, It's very different maintenance. I would say that,
Cost-wise?
yeah, asphalt is certainly more expensive to maintain. You do have to maintain it or it does deteriorate, and then it can become problematic. It also depends on where you're building it. We've noticed that if you're anywhere near willows, don't put an asphalt trail in because they're going to start punching right through that asphalt. Gravel trails are a little bit easier to maintain in that regard. I think one of the things that we've run into the most with gravel trails for maintenance is the vegetation. So if a trail is not used, or if you're only using the center foot of the 6 foot wide trail, the grass starts growing in. So as long as you stay on top of that, we recommend spraying to tamp down that vegetation. But yeah, they each have their own unique challenges and costs associated. But I think overall, probably the gravel trails are easier to maintain and less expensive. Our city has actually gone to, instead of asphalt, they're asking developers to put in concrete trails. So they essentially look like sidewalks because they're
Nice.
they do last a lot longer. But now your construction costs are going through the roof.
Have you used roller compacted concrete?
I have not. We have not personally.
It's supposed to be about half the price of.
Yeah, like millings or whatever.
Put in.
Yeah.
We've found at our 3 parks. Granted, we have a local source in Clancy for decomposed granite that we've used for all our trails. And I mean, the biggest benefit is I can maintain those trails usually with a handful of volunteers. As long as I have the source material there, I can have a couple wheelbarrows, a couple shovels. We tamp it down, and you can kind of do it by hand. Asphalt, we can't do that. We would have to hire that out, and typically, or you just need specialized people who know what they're doing, and that's the biggest benefit. We call our trails seasonally accessible. You know, certain times of year they're going to be muddy or snow covered. Not this winter, but then you wouldn't be able to get a wheelchair or a stroller down them. But for the bulk of the summertime, fall, they're accessible, and we have personally I've tried to avoid asphalt because I'm concerned about the long-term cost and the initial costs. Granted, we are a private nonprofit. Sometimes municipal expectations, cities and counties sometimes operate under different rules and expectations than we're able to. So,
What about your traffic? Is it pretty much predominantly local traffic, or do you get any tourists on it? Or
that's a great question. I would say we aspire to have probably more people stop by passing through, but right now it's probably mostly locals who are aware of it. One of the challenges we've not gotten a lot of headway in terms of getting the Department of Transportation, for example, to get some wayfinding signage. There was a county effort that was done years ago to try to coordinate some wayfinding signage, but then they left it up to individual groups to kind of work with areas to get the signage up, and DOT basically said we're not going to do it unless everyone agrees, which has limited. So we don't have signs off Highway 12, for example, Prickly Pear Park, 10 Mile Creek Park, and we'd love to have those because we know Helena, Townsend's similar. People are passing through to get somewhere else in the state. But if I know when I travel, if I knew there was a park nearby, I'd stop with my kids for half hour, just let them run around. So we're still trying to crack the code on that, but I'd say most of our traffic is local.
Thank you.
Madam
Yes,
Chair.
go ahead.
So a couple questions. One, I just pulled up Helena South Trails map on Avenza.
Mm-hmm.
Is your guys' trails on Avenza also?
It is not. We've talked about doing you need a geolocating code for each of the.
Yeah.
We have not done that.
Okay.
This paper map is available as a PDF.
Okay.
But it's not. It doesn't interface with Avenza.
Okay.
Prickly Pears does.
Yeah.
Instead, on our website, we use TrailForks, which is some of that open, crowdsourced data from your watch or your phone or whatever. And we have administrator privileges there, so we can go in and and take out social trails and things
Okay.
like that get mapped inadvertently, or fix lines that don't quite match up with what's on the ground. But that's how we have chosen. It's free, essentially,
Okay,
to use that Trail Fork stuff. They don't
Okay.
mind. They like it because they can eventually sell you a subscription if you really want to nerd out on the data. But yeah, that's how we've done
Okay.
the digital side.
okay, thank you. And then my second question would be, I'm retired Forest Service, so consistency is important to me when
Yeah.
it comes to certain things, especially trail heads, trail signage and everything. So since we're sandwiched in between Gallatin Valley and Lewis and Clark County, I don't know, I know what South Hill Trail signage looks like. I think you guys are similar. And I just was wondering if it would be worth having some consistency in there, just because I know with Al, he has this on his trail plan, like the trail linking to Lewis and Clark County, and as far as Three Forks, which is Gallatin County, it would be nice to have that consistency for the public.
The continuity of
They
it.
would recognize, the totems or whatever, and just a different symbol based on the county or whatever.
Yeah. So we got together with our city recently, and a company called Alta Planning. They do active transportation planning, things like that. And we have a new kind of, and we're starting to roll it out, wayfinding plan.
Okay.
It has a whole family of signs. I actually gave you guys a
Great.
copy of what some of that looks like, and I'm happy to share the whole plan with you guys. Just to give you an example, it's a change from what we've traditionally done. We typically have, I don't know if there's a picture in here on the map somewhere, but these big wooden totems,
Yeah.
they became extremely expensive. They're about
Okay.
$1,200 a piece
Oh,
to
wow.
produce, because they're just solid chunks of wood. We're going more to like metal and smaller wood posts, kind of like what Prickly Pear does. But really focusing and honing in on like how do we help people navigate around
Yeah.
from trail to trail? And so much of our trail system developed through through new developments, new subdivisions, and they'd build the trails, but they wouldn't put the signage in, right? And that fell to us. We've tried to push that responsibility, getting away from that perpetuity thing, onto the city and onto the homeowners associations to eventually maintain that. But you kind of have to have standards, right?
Yes.
So that they all match.
Yes.
So I did share that with you guys and kind of the way we're trending.
Great.
And I will say that for the trails that we manage and maintain, we're using what the city is going to do, but we're looking for less expensive materials. We're not quite as fancy, and we're not doing the huge blade signs that are like this wide.
Yeah.
We're using the infrastructure that we already have on some of our kiosks. So
Okay.
like the Forest Service boards,
Mhm.
very similar to that.
Okay.
And just kind of adapting what they are adopting in the city to what works for us.
Okay.
But it'll feel the same, it'll look similarly. Yeah.
Okay.
But I love that idea, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I found. The Forest Service, the forest might be consistent, but different forests might have. Typically, trail signs or road signs are the same, but there's just certain things that aren't consistent across, and it can be confusing to the public.
Yeah.
And I know we have the river trail, the Paddlers River Trail, that connects with you guys that we probably need to be a little consistent on
Yeah.
as well. But
Yeah, we've had a similar, the system, in some ways the South Hill system is so old that you've got a older signage intermixed with, essentially trying to modernize it to at least be consistent in terms of kind of fonts and, you know, things, but it's a work in progress. You'll find some, and we're also trying to update slowly. We're starting to, like, the South Hills have tons of jurisdictional ownership. There's some BLM, there's Forest Service, there's city, there's private lands. And so what we've tried to start doing is adding just, where are you? Are you on Forest Service land? Like a sign that says where you are, because there's subtle differences right now, but there's the potential in the future that you could have markedly different expectations for use depending if you were on Forest Service land or city land. So we're trying to articulate, everyone thinks they're on public land, and they usually are, but once in a while you're on private land too. And so rules and expectations are a little different. So we're trying to be more consistent, but we're certainly a work in progress.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good to know.
I would highlight Hike Kind too. That's Bozeman and kind of etiquette, trail etiquette. That's kind of their program for getting folks to hike kind, run kind, bike kind.
Great.
PPLT hasn't adopted, Helena hasn't adopted that formal kind of trail etiquette program. But trail etiquette, as you're building trails, how people behave and your expectations is really important.
Yes.
We went through a period of time, 5 or 6 years ago, where we're getting a lot of conflict between hikers and bikers. And I think it's calmed down, but it's still kind of present, and we're trying to be more proactive, but we can only do so much as the nonprofit. I mean, Broadwater County and Townsend participating in that and heading it off. If you start to hear of some conflicts, I'd encourage being really upfront with kind of those expectations on the front end, because they can become really big headaches, depending on how folks are behaving on the trails.
So kind of tying the two of those together, have any of you gone digital with the QR codes on your posts?
Yes, we have.
Do you have just the mapping, or do you have trail etiquette, or what do you have when they click on that QR code?
Oh boy, I'm trying to remember where it goes. I think typically it'll send, so if we have a QR code on a kiosk, for example, at the trailhead, it'll typically send them to the featured trail page that we have on our website, right? And from there, you're on our website, so you can, click on etiquette stuff. Or our favorite is when someone clicks on that featured trail and then goes to the give page and donates to us because they liked what we did. Yes, and interestingly enough, we had there's a gentleman that we became aware of, his company and his project in Bozeman that is doing these. Basically, they set up it's a customer service software type thing, where they print you a sign and it has a QR code. And let's say you're on the Painted Hills Trail. You scan that QR code. It sends you to a really simple form that says, what do you see on the trails right now? And you can say, I saw a bear, I saw major trail erosion, I saw a bridge is out, a tree is down, dog poop is everywhere, whatever. And you just click on it, and you can decide as an organization what you want, what information you want to collect along with that. But he encouraged us to just make it anonymous, and people can just send you a report, and it goes to your email, and then it goes on this management page. So point is, there are like really neat technology solutions out there now. He was telling us the cost on that would be like $10 a month to keep that running for us, and that I think essentially you're paying for like cloud storage, data storage, or whatever, and for them to set it up. But they're doing this as a pilot for us for free, which is kind of neat. And we told them we would tell them, does it work? How does it work? How doesn't it work? So that they're learning.
And who's it going to right now?
Our QR codes, or the
Well, that basic survey question report answer.
Well,
it will.
They were pitching it to us today, actually.
Oh,
So
wow,
we haven't
okay.
implemented it yet. We told them that
Okay.
we would think about putting it out there, and it seemed like a really cool way to manage that. Or phones work still. At least for now.
Okay. I did have another important question here. How do you determine which trails should be shared trails, like bikes, dogs, walkers, mountain bikers, ATVers, all abilities? I mean, how do you determine that when you're building your trails?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly driven kind of case by case basis. We're in the South Hills, for example, you're pretty much limited to biker, hiker, or both, and we've started to see for years and years, everything was multi-use. You'd have all uses on the same trail. And in recent years, there's been a little bit more of a specialized trail construction model, partly coming out of some of that conflict that I mentioned. Users having a designated bike trail where they don't have to worry about a dog walker coming up allows them kind of the experience they want to have. Similarly, a universal access trail that doesn't allow bikes allows for some quiet bird watching, or for folks with a visual or physical disability to use the trail without concern of something approaching them at speed. And that's kind of been driven, and I think this is where that community piece comes in. What is the community wanting here? And I think it'll really depend on the project. For example, again, to use the county piece of land on Mill Road there, that I would anticipate is probably a multi-use biker or hiker runner access to get to that point. And then you would want, and then probably not a motorized trail, I would think, because it's right up next to the road. But it would really depend, a lot of folks want dog parks, and that'll limit folks who have a fear of dogs or don't want to be near dogs. And we have properties that allow for dogs off leash, on leash, and then we have our new Prickly Pear Park. We've said no dogs allowed, and it doesn't matter which side you pick. You're going to make a number of folks mad.
Of course.
I've heard, we don't come to that park anymore because there's dogs. We don't come to that park because you don't allow dogs. And so that usually means we're doing the right thing. We're somewhere in the middle. So,
Okay.
I would say that most of the time so in our mission is to build non-motorized trails. I don't remember the exact language, but so we don't typically deal with the motorized use component. The exception to that is e-bikes, and so we have no state law, county law, city law, anything like that allows or doesn't allow e-bikes. It's all very squishy. And because we don't own most of the land underneath the trail system, we don't get to make those rules either. But I will say that most of our trails are multi-use, non-motorized, and so that can be any kind of foot traffic, bike traffic. The example of the trail that I point to when people ask, well, do you allow equestrians on your trail? Is this Painted Hills Trail? It's a narrow single track trail that is very busy, probably not appropriate, not constructed first and foremost as an equestrian trail, but not appropriate for horse travel. And so typically, we don't put up signs that say no horseback riding, but it would be a total nightmare for a horseback rider to be on that trail when there's 1,000 bikers going by them, every afternoon. So, so in a lot of cases, we live in the Wild West, right? We don't have sheriffs patrolling our trails. We can't get the city cops or the animal control people to come out and police dogs. We rely a lot on people just to use common sense and to self-select into the trails that make sense for them. If they don't like dogs and it's a really popular dog area, well then, there's this other area that probably is less populated. I would say that we always start though with the foundation that bikes and people on foot are the priority.
Have any of you had any experience in Monday, Wednesday, Friday bikers, Tuesday, Thursday horses, that kind of stuff? Or certain portions, they can only be out there on bikes in that area for a part of the day? I mean, do you have experience or do you have trails and parks like that?
In the
already?
Forest Service, on some of the Forest Service trails that are extremely popular, I would say there's maybe 6 to 8 total out of all the trails around Bozeman that actually have that. It
Okay.
does seem to work. We've been asked to do that on certain trails like the
Okay.
Triple Tree Trail, where it's really busy on Saturdays, and so adding bikers and hikers together can be, can cause a lot of conflict. We've pushed back against that because we don't own the land. It's Montana DNRC that owns most of that land, and our agreement with them, or their easement with the county, is that there's no restrictions on what, as long as it's non-motorized, there's no restrictions on that, and they're not interested in having people call them constantly about people violating that. So again, we try to let people police themselves. I always say we're not going to make a rule that no one's going to enforce. So we're very careful about the whole restrictions and rules and regulations and things like that.
Is there a minimum width that works well for bicyclers and pedestrians?
If bikers are obeying the etiquette, they are yielding to people on foot. So that means they stop, they pull off the trail, they put 1 foot down, they don't move, so that there's no two-way traffic. So we say, it should be fine on a 2 foot wide trail, 18 to 24 inch trail. I don't know how Nate feels about that, but that's the way it's supposed to happen. What has happened on our trail system generally is that if there's a lot of bike and pedestrian traffic, that trail starts to widen, the vegetation starts to get beat down because people are wanting to go two ways. Typically, we construct a single track natural surface trail as 36 inches, but it often, the vegetation often creeps down to where you only have that bench, but you have, a more narrow trail itself. But in those areas that are more heavily used, we're back to 36 inches, sometimes even wider, as people kind of go up on the side and the trail erodes down, and now you've got a wider bench.
So you have
Steeper
bikers
access.
yield to pedestrians?
Yes. That is the
Interesting.
triangle of yielding
Mhm.
etiquette. Everyone yields to horses, bikers yield to both.
Okay.
Yeah, I just lost it. What did you just say? As a reference point, our parks, so the single track trails, very similar to what Matt just mentioned. Our parks that we have some trails that are 6 feet wide and some that are up to 10 feet wide. And that allows for the passing. Technically, if you're looking at the ADA standards, it's a 3 foot trail minimum with 5 foot passing lanes every 500 feet or so. We have found our 6 foot wide trails at 10 Mile Creek Park. We still get some, I think partly because everyone feels like there's enough room to go back and forth. We have gotten some complaints and concerns about bikes, even though there's technically enough room to pass, that people aren't slowing down and yielding in the same way because it feels like there's two-way traffic. So that's something. Our wider trails, I haven't heard any complaints, but that 5 to 6 feet, I think still feels a little tight for different users on the same trail. And yeah, that's kind of where that education etiquette piece comes in.
Okay.
The question, how do you guys deal with the developers? They're the ones that come in and are gonna develop a piece of property. Do you work with them to get the trail, or is that the city, or who does that? And do you interact with that, or do you just, I saw you, Matt, saying, nah, we don't, we let them go do that stuff, but if you don't do it, then where does it come from?
We have really strong subdivision standards, both in the city of Bozeman and now in the Triangle area. Bozeman, Belgrade, Four Corners has its own trails plan because while those are county subdivisions, the county understands that that development is going to be pretty dense and that people are trying to get in and out of Belgrade and Bozeman. They're living there, but they're working in one of the cities, generally speaking. So we've gotten to the point now where the city is so good at forcing the developers to follow the codes that we've been able to step out of that game. We don't sit in on those subdivision reviews anymore. Unless we see something alarming. We still keep our eye on it, but generally speaking, the city holds their feet to the fire. And to be quite honest, we've built this culture in Bozeman where if your subdivision doesn't have parks and trails in it, no one wants to live there, right? So that's kind of neat. It's starting to catch on in the county as well. But the county outside of the Triangle area is very lax. They have, I think you basically have to dedicate whatever it is, a percentage of your land as parkland, depending on how many units you're developing. But there's no real standards for what goes in the park or how many, where trails should and shouldn't be, and those kinds of things. There's a similar issue in the city of Belgrade where they followed the county's subdivision standards, and what they've ended up with, unfortunately, are trails that don't make sense, or parkland that have no trails in them, or no playgrounds. They have no park development standards, and that happens all across the country. I think that's without, and that's the push-pull between, right, how much do you guys want to legislate developers do versus having creativity or rules that one size fits all doesn't necessarily apply, right? But we have very strong rules and regulations. The development code for parkland is many pages out of a 500-page document or whatever. So,
yeah, I'd say our experience is more similar to what you describe in Belgrade and the county lands outside of those main areas. It would be one thing that I think is nice about kind of county trails planning is that you can then overlay that when a development comes in. Hey, let's keep up. We found that there's really cool trail potential in certain neighborhoods, but it doesn't connect to the next neighborhood because they were developed separately, and then the trail picks up again somewhere else. But now you've got this
connectivity.
Yeah, connectivity. And we're trying to, or in the typical way the developer will dedicate parkland is it's in like the gullies that really can't
unusable
be used.
land. You can't build on it anyway.
Yeah, and so you get stuck kind of like you can technically build some trails in there, but it could be really hard, really challenging, and does it really fulfill kind of the park's mission? We have certainly not been very successful, and we don't typically participate in those processes in a really significant way. It's more of a wish that I have that when we approve subdivisions that they match up like a puzzle piece, that they fit any open space on this one will mirror on the next one to create those future connection pieces. But Lewis and Clark County in the area around Helena certainly isn't doing that currently. So it is a challenge as we grow.
Okay, are there any other burning questions for our guests tonight before we excuse them? But you're welcome to stay. We have another few minutes of doing some business, but yes, Al.
Not so much a question. You guys have been a huge amount of support, and I've talked to at least you two guys quite frequently, and I appreciate all that. So, yeah, that map on the wall is the base map that we used. We have an overlay with all of our trail routes, okay? So we have 2 trails, and then the Copper Hills complex. The one along the highway out here, and that is going in as a TSP proposal from us to get started. That'll be our first project, and it'll just be a maintenance of that asphalt trail. But then it's like, well, what about the warning things where the trail goes through the driveways and a couple of rests and some signs, that kind of thing, you know. And I appreciate your discussion about, you know, find a place, and that's been our discussion with the board, the Trails Committee, all of us, is that we need to get some things that are visible. Fortunately, that trail is highly visible, and I think it'll be a really good start. And then we'll be looking to go from there. And we just had a kind of a new startup meeting of our Trails Committee the other night about implementation of the plan. So the plan is there, it's there to look at, it's there to work from. We're not writing the plan anymore, we're done with that. So now we're trying to get on with getting it done. So that's the first piece. The discussion with the Centerville Park is kind of the next one everybody's got their eye on, along with the one to the fairgrounds along the highway. That's probably going to be a transportation alternatives proposal, because it's in the highway right away and there's a brand new water line in it. So it's going to take some work. But I think we're kind of in step with what you guys are saying. But I look forward to some more discussion about your toolkit and things, and how we all pull that together and go down the road of what's next, where's the fundraising. Our biggest issue is, you know, we don't have a bank account to go to be able to get the engineering done that gets us set up to go with proposals. And, you know, so we're strapped now. Yeah, we're working on one. We hired a firm that said they could do it. It's going, because we weren't going to get it done in time. But hopefully the next ones will have some opportunities. But thank you guys. I want to personally thank you for all the leadership you've given us, provided us, and mentorship you've provided me in trying to run this thing. But so we'll continue to do that and stay in touch. I've got some specific things with the river you and I need to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And,
Well, we're happy to, we can absolutely provide a letter of support for your TSP grant too.
Okay.
If you send me an email with a couple of the bullet points or whatnot, I mean, particularly with our PPLT's work in the area on lands and whatnot, I'd be happy to write a letter of support for that grant.
I would say ditto on that, yes.
okay.
Yeah.
I'll send you
Show some
a
regional
whole
support.
statement.
Yeah. Well, I brought a couple I'm going to leave some things here for folks to pick through at the end if you'd like, some maps and some of our info for PPLT just for context. Yeah, feel free to grab it, and yeah, thanks for having us down. We appreciate it.
No, thank you,
We
gentlemen. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Great information.
Wendy, I typed out my answers to all your questions. Some of it's in
Thank you, because we didn't get to all of them, and we've
right,
been
so I'll
frantically
send that
writing.
to you. And,
Okay.
This information is just such
yeah.
good information for us.
You bet.
You know, we could be here all night.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
gotta let you guys go, but yeah, so appreciate it.
I would say the only thing that I would ask from you guys is that if we're doing a ribbon cutting, you invite me. So I can come and,
Absolutely.
For sure. We
and-
will. Al's
and
gonna
see
be
what
down
happens.
On the river.
Exactly what we're going to
And then
do.
we're gonna
That's right.
flood.
There we go. I love it. You got to celebrate those wins.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, we were talking about some of the easy wins. The four of us were at the Trails Committee, and just some of the easy wins. And the first, that paved path is highly used even for the cross country and the middle school kids running and things. And then the Gallatin Valley or the Missouri River Paddlers Trail continuing from Toston Dam to Townsend's Campground. And just getting some signs up. I mean, that's a heavily used section even between Toston boat launch there on the highway to Townsend, or even York Island, and getting some signage and getting some quick wins so that we can start showing the public that we've put together and are now moving down that road of when we canvassed everybody, what do you want? And we've been doing the trails plan for 3 years, and I know Nicole and I and this board have been working for years trying to figure out what it is this county needs, wants, how do we get going on the parklands that we were given way back when. What can we do with them, and how do we do that connectivity? It's not going to do us any good to have Centerville Park developed if we can't get to it, especially for the kids. And so there's some challenges that we as a county face to make that happen. And that's where we, talk with you folks, because you've been down those roads, especially on the connectivity piece. I know in Spring Meadow, and trying to connect that trail when I was working with MDT and doing the non-motorized transportation coordinator program. So
Absolutely.
that was a challenge for Helena for the connectivity. So I thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming tonight, and we'll be in touch. We appreciate the information.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Obviously, we've been, we're
I think so.
get up and stretch a little bit, and then we'll just finish up what we have. John and Al, you're welcome to stay, or you?
Yeah, I'm gonna catch these guys outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
Watch for deer driving home.
Yeah.
Once we're gonna get out of here.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, you guys
Yes.
will continue
you.
to hear from us.
Okay, love it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah, very nice.
It's the networking for sure. Yeah, let's get up and stretch a little bit.
It was good to hear from Tom on the coalition.
Yes.
That's really good information.
Okay. Boy,
Can I
yeah.
just see your-
We're going to kind of just fly through this in about 10 minutes, okay?
Yes, I'm still recording.
Oh,
Yep,
sorry.
it's on. The recording's
Yes.
still
Still
on.
live, as everyone's stretching.
We're still live. We're
Well,
entertaining
do we
everyone
have
out there.
a quorum? I
Yes,
think we still have a
in our
quorum
conversation.
with 3 of us. Because it's 3 out of 5. We still have our quorum with 3 of us?
Yep.
Okay. I just want to make sure. And I love that name there at the 5 o'clock, Amy Currents.
Yes, she came through.
I didn't think she was going to.
I didn't either.
I'm very, very positive with that.
I'm working on another person too.
Do you have-
See if-
Do you have her contact information? Sorry. Do you have
Yeah.
So can you
I
send
do.
it to me? Because I gotta get it on the agenda. I gotta get Mike and Dirk off there, and then I also have to email her and get her on the email contact list. So,
Okay.
thank you. Because she doesn't list a phone number or an email address on that letter.
And nice thing is she'll add to the construction part of it very well.
Yeah.
Are we still live, or we
We
take
are
it up?
live.
We are still
yep,
live.
I have not shut this off, otherwise I'm gonna have to do another
Where'd Wendy go?
Okay,
section.
she's in the restroom.
Oh,
I'd love to see an individual who left recently from our board come back, because once we start building, that's what she wanted to
somebody
do.
good.
It was Lacey.
Oh,
her.
yeah, because she's
Yeah.
she's an engineer.
She is, senior engineer at the
Yep.
firm. But it would be, she joined the board to build, and to,
Implement.
mhm.
Yeah. Well,
Well, so did I, but I want to be on the ground. We're gonna do it. We're gonna go. The one at Centerville,
yeah. We need a
flag it. Pretty pink.
yes. And then we-
Sharper Surveying's the one that gave me the round roller to mark out the distances.
Okay, great.
And we can borrow it again.
I think it'd be- And then we could kind of figure out like a list of what needs to get done and then present it.
And even just one day, one property. Things like we did at the school, the hospital, the community.
Agree.
And if I could get an organization like Rocky to
Yeah.
adopt it,
Yeah,
or a portion of it, and then maybe get Lions to
be good.
adopt Thorn Park. Okay, are we all back together? All right. Let's go ahead and look at the letter of interest for the board from Amy Currents. Is that one in here? Yes.
Yes, right here.
I like picture has a colorful background and underwater basket. Yeah.
Invaluable resource.
That's the best part. Get on the rest of that. Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Al. Yeah. And I appreciate you pointing that out. Yeah, I think so. That would be good. Yeah.
And what she doesn't say in this letter is she is also construction with her husband.
Yes.
And they built our staircase out of wood. It was beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. Okay, I entertain a motion to accept Amy Currents to the board.
That we accept Amy Current's request to become a member of our Parks and Recreation Board.
I second.
Hearing no dissension, motion passed. We will welcome Amy Currents to the board. And that would be fantastic. Okay, so that letter then comes from you, Albert, or do I need to write up the letter?
I think it goes to the.
Of
it's for the
invitation?
Commissioners.
Go to the
Commissioners
commissioners,
for
okay,
acceptance.
so we're,
I can send it along, or I can just give it, yeah,
Okay.
I'll just get it.
okay, so we make the recommendation that she be approved. Okay. All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, can I add?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I know it's not public comment period. I just wanted you to know this is a consent agenda item. The commissioners meet tomorrow. So I will make sure that their administrative assistant, Daleen Hansen, knows this information so she can present this to the commissioners tomorrow. So hopefully it can just be finished up relatively
And she
quickly.
could be on the board
And
by
then
February.
county staff, Daleen Hansen, will write that letter to Amy if the commissioners accept that approval. So just so you know, they will
Super.
kind of try and move it along.
Good
Okay,
timing.
thank you very much.
You're gonna take care of
Appreciate
I'll
it.
take care. Okay.
Okay, election of board officers and advisory members. Do we have a letter of resignation from, okay,
Mike?
from Mike?
No,
Okay,
no. I think his term was done. I don't think it's required. I think it was requested.
it's just he's not going to renew or request to be continued. Okay. All right, what about for,
I did get one from Dirk just
Dirk.
tonight.
I'm
I got one from Dirk tonight.
okay, well, it's a good thing we at least have the three positions. We still need, we technically can go to 7, but we at least should have 5. Okay, well, we'll all keep beating the bushes. Like I said, if we could get a few good wins, we might get some more interest on board. Okay, election of board officers and advisory members. I put my request in to step down as chairman. And I believe Carol put hers in to accept chairmanship.
So somebody's nominating Carol.
I nominate
I'm gonna go
Carol.
nominate Carol.
And I will second that.
Okay. Now what?
Do you accept nomination?
Sure. Yes, I accept.
Now, does she have to be approved by the commissioners or just by this board?
Not for- No, not for them.
Okay,
And
all right. Yay, verily duly elected your chairman. Go for it.
And we have a vice chair or co-chair.
and I would recommend that Jennifer, you would stay on as like vice chair or the co-chair. What do you call the person who
Yeah,
would be
either one.
next in
Vice chair.
line?
Ex officio.
Yes.
Okay.
Just because I'm new and I
Oh,
wouldn't make
absolutely.
a very good leader at this stage. I need more experience.
I carry the library with me right here, all the documents from the last 8 years. So,
Did you accept nomination for vice chair?
I second.
Is she second?
okay,
Yeah,
accept,
accepted.
yes.
Okay.
Are we going to talk about the park board role, Parks and Rec board's role, or do we want to slide that? It's 5 to 6 already. Or am I continuing this, or is she continuing this?
Feel free to continue.
Okay,
You're
I'll
doing a great
continue
job.
this.
Madam Chair, it's typical that the elected chair would take over at the next meeting.
The next
So
meeting.
you would finish
Got
out
it.
your.
Okay, so we'll finish out on this one then.
So the question is, do we want to go over the bylaws, objectives, and all of that, or do we postpone it till
I think we should defer that
to February's meeting?
to February's meeting.
We're gonna table to February.
Yes, table to February.
I have a request, Madam Chair.
Yes,
If I could either collect those back then, so I don't have to copy them again, or you're going to promise to mark them up and then bring them back to me, so I don't have to make new copies.
The bylaws?
The bylaws.
promise
You're welcome
to
keep
mark them up
If you want to
and,
mark them up and do something, I'm fine as long as you bring them back next week.
absolutely,
Oh, okay.
I can do
I'll
that.
remind you of your email.
Yeah.
I'll bring mine back.
Didn't we already go over the bylaws and did our review when you brought the bylaws in? I thought we had done, I think you two
Carol,
did that.
Did you were looking at something for an annual meeting
Well,
in January.
the
I
only
thought
thing
that was
I
the
was
annual review of the
thinking
bylaws.
was, it talked about, one of them, where was that? Review the objectives, and a question I had was, what does that mean? Does that?
Oh, it's Article 4. It's Article 4.
4.
It's held on the January 1st, and it's held on the first regular meeting in each calendar year. And then you put what we have to go over.
Oh, yeah, review, so page 3, Article 4, meetings of the board on bullet point 2, review the board objectives which guide the board. So I wasn't clear on what the objectives were, if that was like what we were going to focus on for the year. Because I didn't see any objectives in the bylaws.
Okay,
So
all right, we'll
something
think
to-
about that
yeah.
then. I'll go back in my notes, in the books, whether we had an annual objectives or if we had long-term strategic objectives. I'll have to go back and take a look at that. Okay, so we'll table that till February. Please bring back any comments you might have, concerns or questions. The checklist for projects, I have not done. I still have not done. I am somewhat struggling on that, and we can talk about that because my biggest question on that one is, are we looking for, especially in light of what these gentlemen were saying, your maintenance, your operations, who's the ownership? How are we going to, if somebody comes in with a dog park, are we going to do a 5-year lease? Are we going to lease the land as like we do with the golf club or the rod and gun club? Or are we just going to allow them to build infrastructure, and then what happens when they don't maintain it? What we talked about an MOU versus an actual legal document to hold their feet to the fire to, or, you know, do we require they come up with another organization that takes over ownership? I mean, when we have a checklist for projects, it's one thing to get it built. It's another thing for the continuity of it. And that's what I'm struggling with on trying to put on paper. And of course, Helena says the organizations bring the money to the table and then they write the contract to have it built and to maintain it. But they get the money in perpetuity from those organizations that were the initial instigators of the project. And I asked him, I said, is that for 10 years, 20 years? He said, well, until the money runs out, and then we go back to the organization, or if the organization's gone defunct, they try to find, it's now on the city.
Okay.
But that's trying to compare it to somebody who has full-time employees to be able to do the maintenance, and the fact that the county or at least the county, they just require Helena requires them to just bring the money to the table.
Okay.
And so we're such a different entity from that. And I have not heard back from Manhattan or Belgrade. on the checklist that they use. So those are the other two that I called. So that one is still in work. Youth representative, Carol, have you had any?
So I haven't spoken to Mrs. Hebron again since the holidays, who's the superintendent of the schools. Lindsay briefly mentioned to me this evening that the other commissioners thought it was a great idea to have a youth representative, so they support it. We, I guess, need to decide as a board, do we want that position to be a liaison or a member? And then kind of draft up some objectives on what the responsibilities would be.
Okay.
So that would be something, I guess, maybe to think about and bring to the next meeting your thoughts and ideas on whether or not we want a youth liaison or a youth representative that would actually sit as a board member.
I think if we were to do a youth representative of a board member, we have to look at our bylaws to make sure that that supports that.
There's
But-
legal consultation too.
And legal.
I think you mentioned legal consultation on eligibility, I think, last time as well in the minutes.
Okay, so we need to find out legal.
Because technically, they're still a minor.
Yeah. So if that's the case, we may just want him to be a liaison.
Yeah.
I think that, are you guys good with that? Okay, so we'll go with a liaison, and then we'll need, maybe I can draft up some expectations on what the liaison would do, get it out to folks for feedback.
Yeah, what we really
Lots of
want
ideas.
is we want the students' voice.
Mm-hmm.
And whether they're on the National Honor Society or the Student Council or involvement in the school, what is it they need as students? I mean, that's how interviews and scholars during the scholarships, it's one of the questions we ask on the scholarships. If you could change one thing in Townsend, what would it be? And some of the answers that have come from the students have actually been parks and things that we've initiated in this town.
Okay.
The skate park was one of the big ones. That every survey we sent out to the kids, it was a skate park.
Okay.
So that's kind of what we want to hear. We want to hear what is it the students need, whether it's on the athletic side, a workout area. In finishing the trail, that paved trail, it's going to enhance the workout area for the cross-country runners, the kids that are using that as a running the athletics and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And I would be more than happy if you guys want to work together on these checklists and things, because they are going to take a little bit of
Okay.
revamping and looking at and revamping and that sort of thing. So if you
Sounds good.
guys want to meet up with me, or if you guys want to do a work meeting or whatever,
Okay,
I'd be willing to help with both of
That would be
those.
great.
okay. Have we had enough on the BCDC trails? We have anything else we want to add to on the update? I think we were all there, so
Right.
As long as you can provide a letter of support.
letter of support for the stewardship grant. Okay, when is that due? Yesterday?
End of January, 31st,
So-
30th, whatever the last business day is.
So if the Parks and Rec provide a letter of support, I think it would be signed by the commissioners. How does that work?
I think it would have to be, wouldn't it?
Madam Chair, may I respond?
Yes.
So more than likely, it would need to be vetted in some capacity by the commissioners, since you are an advisory board serving at the pleasure of the commissioners, right? So I think that would be a good idea if you were to draft a letter of support and then get it in front of the commissioners. It doesn't need to be in a formal meeting. I think it could be in an informal process, maybe just in front of the chair, which currently this year for 2026 is Commissioner Randolph, and have her take a look at it. And then if she felt it was necessary to take it to the commission, she could do so. But it doesn't need to be a complicated process. But yeah, Carol, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's in your like as a board, your best interest in moving forward, since you are representing the county.
Would it have to have legal review?
No, ma'am. No,
Okay.
you wouldn't need legal review. But
Thank you.
I believe you could simply just email it to Commissioner Randolph and then let her use her discretion on how to carry it forward, but obviously in a timely manner so that it can
Can get
go
to
with the
them.
December or January 31st packet.
Okay.
Okay.
Al Christofferson. Yeah, so I have been sharing virtually all my emails with all of you. So between John and I and all of you, we're all seeing all the same information as we're moving forward. I'm sharing.
I don't think I'm on your trails one.
Okay, I apologize if I missed you. I'll catch you up. Just so we're all on the same thing, and you all know that if you see something in one of those you that's not supposed to be there or isn't right, you tell me. Get back to me and tell me. And so I would just soon operate that way, especially with this grant, trying to get it in and the coordination and stuff on it. I sent a couple of you review drafts of the minutes, and I got some comments back. So I'll get those fixed, and they'll be out tomorrow. And they're in much more depth and detail than normal, but it's designed because we get a lot of new people involved in the trail stuff, and so there's some background in there and catch-up kind of information and things like that. And then, John shares with us anything coming from the grant writer about new and different grants. And so far she's been getting a hit on every one of them so far, because I look at every one of them and go, oh my gosh, we could use this here, we could use that there. And so I know, talking with these guys tonight, they're on the team now. They're fully aware of where we're at and what we're doing. They're excited for us, and they're ready to help us. So
Okay.
So will that toolkit, Al, that we're going to get from him, will that just go straight to the trails then and work through it that way? Is that how we would do that?
The trail planning toolkit from Tom?
Mm-hmm.
He'll share it with probably all of us. If it comes to the board, I would hope you share it with us. If it comes to us, we'll share it with the board. Because it's a toolkit that we all need to understand.
Yes.
And because we're all going to be liaisons with the community. I think it's going to move pretty fast.
So he asked for a letter of support from this board for his grant, which is the same grant you're going for.
And they
So it's
also
really a
offer-
dual letter support.
And they're also putting in for TSP grants. It's the same $2 million pool,
Right,
all under the Transportation Stewardship
program,
Grant
yeah.
So,
So I-
on one hand, we're competing for the same money. On the other, it's support for our stuff. So,
But the way he asked us to write that letter basically was to request that we'd like to be the pilot program for
Yeah,
that, and
yeah.
we've got a plan and a 3-year effort underway already,
yeah.
and to kind of test their toolkit. So, okay.
Well,
so
if you
then I-
want to, coordinate a letter that you get through the commission, we can look at it and make sure we got our thoughts into it, and that way it covers all of us. And you can list us in there as coordinated with us or whatever. Be okay with
You
that,
think
John?
that would be okay, Nicole? To have them as co-signers for the letter of support?
Well, I'd rather have it just for us, but.
Separate letter?
I think
Okay.
a separate letter would be better, maybe. but
Okay.
If you think it's better to have it coordinated, but.
No, I was just thinking how many letters.
Well, we would do 2 separate letters of
Yeah.
support then.
Yeah.
One would be for Tom asking, we're supporting your effort and we'd like to be the first pilot program, and the other one is to support the planning and the effort that you've
I
done.
think they're
Probably
two
two.
separate issues.
Probably two.
Yep.
2 separate, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, moving on, 6:10, we're about right on time, right? Review the next meeting's agenda and board assignments. Okay.
What do we got, Bob?
So bylaws,
the checklist, the youth representative, and Madam Chair, I apologize, I did use a new format for the agenda, so I did not get the approval of the minutes, so we'll have to approve December's and January's at the next meeting.
Okay,
You have
That's
them
fine.
there, but we'll approve them next time. I don't know what else you wanted to put on that agenda.
Parks and Rec master plan.
What do you have again? Sorry.
I'm sorry, bylaws, a checklist for projects, we tabled that, and then a youth representative, we tabled that.
Okay.
Which are the first 3 topics from last month, too.
Let's see.
You
this
did
is
the master
way.
plan review, that's what you did.
You didn't want me to put that on there because that was just gonna go to,
I think that,
that didn't need any more approval, you said.
Yeah.
Is that not the master plan, but the?
Bylaws.
Oh, the bylaws. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We had board liaisons to community rec groups. We were going to decide who was going to do which ones.
Oh, then
But I think that'll be in the minutes, right, from that?
Yep.
Okay.
Good items.
yeah, I think we briefly mentioned that last time. And then I guess at the only other thing I could think of would be Amy. That would be Amy's first meeting.
Oh, yeah.
So having her be brought up to speed with the bylaws and all of that, that'd actually be good timing for her.
Okay. And then ask her what liaison, her community rec group is kind of the 4-H equestrian. I know she was there when you did that community forum out at the exhibit hall too. But she would be a good asset for that. Yes, ma'am.
So you want the assigning of liaison groups in there?
Okay.
That'll take some time, those
Yep.
topics.
Okay, February 16th is President's Day. So, do we want to slide the meeting to another day or another week?
February 16th. If people are okay moving it, I don't know if I'll be in town that day. Might be out of state,
Which one, February 16th or the following week?
the 16th.
Well, that's
So-
President's Day.
County's closed.
County is closed. That's
So-
why I just wanted to let them have the day off.
Yeah, no, I totally,
Yeah.
I think if
Yeah,
we could
3-day
move it,
weekend.
yeah.
It's your call. You're a board member,
What do you guys want to do?
board chair.
What if we just moved it to the next Monday,
The 23rd?
I'm good with the 23rd. Do we have the 23rd open in this room?
I'll have to go to I can let you know once you pick another day and I can check both of them, just in case.
It'd have to either be the 9th or the 23rd, right?
Okay, I can check the Google. So your first choice is the 23rd, your second is the 9th.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll check that.
Yep. I believe I can make either one because our auxiliary ladies meeting is now at 2 o'clock on Monday.
Oh, cool.
That's what we always had it the third Monday because there were so many conflicts on Monday for
Okay.
me. Because that's always our veterans organizations all meet on Mondays. So,
Okay. What time do they meet?
well, now the one on the ladies group meets at 2 o'clock
Okay.
on the second
Do
Monday.
we want to keep this meeting at 6? Or does that work for you, or would it?
I don't know what
better-
Amy's schedule. She's the only one that's still working. I mean, we're retired, so it works. Doesn't matter to me
I do work
necessarily.
in Helen on Mondays, but I don't work every Monday like I requested today off, so I could be here at 4 today.
Okay,
Do
well,
you want to keep it at 6?
Maybe a week for another month, could we change it after we get Amy on board? And
Sure.
we can talk about it,
We
yeah.
can look.
Could we change it to a different time?
Whatever works for folks. I'm good.
Well, and I don't know what works best for Commissioner Rickmeyer and Abra
Commissioner
and
Rickmeyer brought it up tonight, that it was nice to come straight over here at 4
Doesn't
and
matter to me.
start, but
Yeah, I'd be good with 4 o'clock.
my problem is I don't know if I can get here, I can't get here in time. If my schedule is so iffy though, sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. It just depends if I'm
Okay.
scheduled to work.
Okay.
Well, we can talk about it next month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That worked great for me on the second Monday because the 2 o'clock meeting, other than we went a little long,
Yeah,
to get over here by the 4.
okay.
But if we put it at 4:30,
Yeah.
4 or 4:30.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind going early as long as I can get here.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
but the February 23rd, we want to stick with 6 o'clock
yes, please.
for this one as our first option. Okay. Okay.
Well, that was very good information.
Are there any other comments or suggestions or questions to come before the board? Okay, I hereby adjourn 6:17. Thank you all very much for coming.